Okay, let's make sure everything is going live here. Yep, that's live. Yep, that's live. Yep, that's live. All right. Alrighty, so I'm just going to share this out in Facebook. Oh, whoops. Haha, I forgot to change the frame. Let me change that really quick. Sorry, guys. I know that's so crucial for your viewing experience here, so let me fix that. I saved it, but didn't update it. Classic move. Where are we at? There we go. Here's the new one for today. My bad. All right, cool. So, one more moment. I have 2 more groups to share to, and then we'll be ready to rock and roll. Okay. So today we are working on this Reaper guy right here. Let me actually adjust my focal point. There we go. So we're working on this guy to here. We're gonna to here. This guy here today, and we're gonna be doing some more advanced techniques on him than usual. But beyond that, pretty standard. We're just gonna be working on the armor, and that's it. We'll have final images of him, and then some other work as well later this evening. So we're just gonna jump right into it. Hard to see the color that's on the palette right now, but it's like a really pallid green tone. Is that him below us? Or is that a car? Nothing keeps going on, it's him. But that's how loud it was. It was like shaking the walls whenever he was blasting that music. Good neighbor to have. Really fun. Alrighty. Hope everybody's having a good day out there so far. If not, too bad. You're just gonna have to work on that. Just kidding, of course. Maybe, maybe not. Who knows? Nothing too crazy today, so I've essentially what we've already done. I already did the majority of the base coloring for the non-metallic metal on all of the armor. Highlighted it up just to test it out a little bit to make sure I actually liked the color that I was doing. Then I went back through and did hue tinting with the airbrush to sort of mellow things back out, change the look of a few things, and then now it's just the refinement step. So this client sent me this as their character, and they also had, like, the reference art that they sent had really dark armor, but the armor was also a little bit more intricate in the artwork. So instead what I'm going for here is just really sort of this off steel sort of color. Sort of reflective, not too reflective. There's obviously some blues and some reds involved as well. You can see the tones a little bit more there on this side, where less of the metalwork has been started, but that at least is the flavor. He did also mention like glowing green orbs on his character somewhere at some point, so there's really nowhere to do that on this miniature. There's nothing sculpted that would make sense that would be glowing for any reason, but once I get beyond sort of all of the other work, I'll take a minute to sort of look and think about the rest of the miniature and if there is something that I could potentially add that OSL effect to, because otherwise, you know, what am I going to do? Like, just make the eyes glow? Which obviously I could do, but that wasn't necessarily what he was describing in the character description. So that is one problem I'm going to have to solve at some point down the line. Another thing that I couldn't really figure out either based on this miniature, so one side of the armor, like, it's almost like a mold line, and I'll show it to you here in a second so you can get a better look at it, but it looks as if it would be a mold line, but it's not. It's actually sculpted into the armor. So you can see it right here, actually. There's a break on both sides of the armor, which I was sort of confused about, but we're just working around that as if it was meant to be. But I was pretty confused about that, because it's like way too deep to be a mold line, so I'm wondering if it is intentional. Different client today than the other Reaper that we had yesterday. Hey Chris, how's it going? What are you talking about, the pommel? What about the pommel? Nothing on the sword has been touched, so that's just primer. Oh, the glowing green orb? Well, that's the thing. There's nothing for it. It's literally just like skulls on the sword, right? There's like nothing there for me to really mess with, so unfortunately. Hey Lawrence, how's it going, man? Lawrence, of course, being the reason why the Wheeler level exists, for good or for worse. Because, yeah, that was the thing I was thinking of was, if I was going to have the eyes glow, then you actually are going to be losing out on a lot of the or not OSL, but the non-metallic metal effect directly on the helmet, so, I don't know, we're going to have to cross that bridge when we get to it. Unfortunately. You said definitely for better? That's funny. The color that I'm applying right now, by the way, is the last sort of step up until we get to those white highlights. So this is sort of the brightest point of reflection. Thanks for hanging out today. If it's your first time watching, make sure you follow, subscribe, like the page wherever you're watching, if it's on Twitch, YouTube, or here on Facebook. If you are watching here on Facebook, I am live streaming currently at the exact same time on Twitch and YouTube in higher definition, so if you're interested in that, you can check it. Just search Mini Painting Studio and you'll find me. I was gonna keep throwing the links on every description, but I was just in a hurry today. I'm only like 0.4 away from being a partner or something on Twitch, which is hilarious because I only recently started streaming like a month. So if I can just get a few more people watching on Twitch at a time, I'll be I guess a cooler person. I don't really know what any of that means on Twitch, but I got the email for it, and I was like, oh, okay, well, that's neat, I guess. Hey, Charlie, appreciate it, man. I guess I'll ignore that break and I'll just continue it across on one of these, but then not the other. I think that's probably the smarter option. As always, if you have any questions, anything like that, feel free to drop them into the chat, no matter where you're watching. And I'll get back to you. As soon as I see it, I'll see if I can help you out. I feel like this got too dark right here. I need to go back on this edge. There we go. You can tell I'd lost that edge, now it's back. Essentially what I'm doing is just trying to prepare all the areas for white highlighting, and then I'll go back through and tint it back down if I'm not happy. Most of it was experimenting, really figuring out how I wanted this color to work. So now that I sort of have an idea, I can be a little bit more aggressive in terms of the amount that I'm applying. Yeah, I mean, honestly, the difference in quality is pretty stark if you've been used to watching the streams on Facebook over the last couple years, but it's up to you, you know. I know some people have been able to pick up on a little bit more subtle stuff because it's easier to see on the Twitch or YouTube streams, but if you're just casually hanging out, then yeah, you can be wherever you want to be, and it's no big deal. And then all of them too are logged on there, so if you're watching and you're hanging out on Facebook and then you're like, oh yeah, I wanted to go back and see what he did for whatever, then you can always just go back to those. Obviously they're logged on Facebook too. They're logged everywhere. I mean, I make it super easy to find my stuff, but should always be online for you. See what's going on over here. What's up to everybody watching on Twitch and YouTube, though? I see there are a couple people. Still really haven't figured out how to get people to watch at all on either of those platforms, but spoilers, I don't necessarily care. It's just an option for you guys. I don't monetize anything, so... As we were talking about yesterday, though, I do have a free class uploaded on the new section of the website. If you were wondering how all that stuff is going to work, you can go to minipainting.studio. It's changed up a little bit. I have a link back to the Amazon influencer store, so you can see everything that I use here in the studio. Normally I just plug it, but some people, I guess, had been using the link that was on the website to go to that directly, so they didn't have to remember, and I had taken it off, so I apologize. That is now back on there. And then you can click on the Scholar Content tab, and it'll take you there. We have a... I can't remember what the actual class is on there now, currently. I think it was a color theory class. I literally forget every day. Let me look. I will look really quick. So yeah, when you go there, you can click on the Scholar Content. That's where pretty much all paid stuff is going to be, so you'll always be able to see whatever's available. So like the power-up, how to use the power-up control video, you have to have purchased that to actually see it. But if you click on the Let's Go button, it asks you to log in. If you haven't bought it, it'll show you all the options to purchase. But the Wash Masterclass is available for free on there. That was actually from last month. But yeah, that definitely is going to be fun once we roll that out completely. It's going to make it a lot easier. And then that way, too, you can kind of go through a lot easier than scrolling through both... well, Patreon we stopped using in general for content management because I just really don't like the way that it's all set up. But here on Facebook, there's like over 260 videos or something right now. But finding a specific one can kind of be a task because you have to scroll through it. And I do obviously do a decent job of trying to include whatever it is that we're working on in the title. But for the premium content, it's going to be so much easier because you can just go and view and you can be like, I want to learn about non-metallic metal, and then boom, it'll just be right there for you waiting. And for those of you that were talking about a digital version of the periodic table and the power-ups obviously aren't going to help you at all unless you have the same type of gripped like primer laminate. But for the periodic table though, I think I have figured out a way how to do that. I figured out a way to do that, sorry. I looked into it more last night and found some better options. So for those of you not in the US, because currently that's really the only place I could offer the periodic table, you should be able to get one. I don't know when, but it's a possibility. It's a thing that you can do, so it's coming. I needed to shade that back down. I kind of took that a weird direction. Chris, yeah, I pretty much use a wet palette all the time now. I've probably been using it for maybe 6 or 7 months all the time. Maybe longer, maybe a year at this point. It's just because I haven't had the palette cam the whole time that you haven't been noticing it. But for me, it's just being able to always have that same consistency of thin paint. I'm not somebody that uses a wet palette because I'm painting over multiple sessions and I want to be able to keep the same paint colors or whatever, which is usually something that people will talk about when they talk about wet palettes. For me, that's pointless. I do too much painting all the time. It's a full-time job, so every day I'm going to be painting. The other thing with that too, right, is that I do have like 600 bottles of paint, so, you know, I'm not like mixing every color that I need. So, you know, typically if I've been working on a color, I already have it available, so I just pull it back. But once you get to the sort of high end of really wanting to control, taper, layer, glaze, pretty much everything, that's where the wet palette is pretty much your only option to get as close. And so obviously I'm using third-party sponges. You can see them right there. So those aren't sponges that you would typically buy. I am using the Masters like container for the wet palette, but I'm not using anything that they gave me at this point, which is pretty funny. I just use it for the shape. But when it comes to wet palettes, like there's obviously Redgrass Games Everlasting Wet Palette. There are some other companies that make them as well, but they're pretty much a waste of money unless you specifically want the shape that they're offering. Now, at least with Redgrass, they have like the whatever it is, the magnetic like wash holder or whatever area, I guess. I don't even know what you would technically call it, but it's like the little wells on the side that you can attach. That's pretty unique. So, I mean, if you want that, I'm assuming that's something that you should probably pay for. But you literally are just using either a natural antibacterial sponge cloth, or you're using a chamois cloth, I believe is the actual term. But either way, you can go on Amazon and you can buy like 10 packs of them for like $10, right? And then you put parchment paper on top and then you're good to go. So, you know, as with most things in life, you can buy it pre-made, pay a premium price, or you can just buy the parts and do it yourself. So, and if you don't even want to do that, you can just literally use parchment paper on top of like a stack of maybe 5 folded up paper towels full of water, and it'll still give you that same result. So, you know, that's all it is for me, is that I need to be able to thin and work precisely, consistently. The other thing too, where I live now, right now, not as much, but during the summer months and different parts of the year, the humidity will change throughout the day pretty rapidly. So if I'm working throughout the day, if in the morning my paint's taking a long time to dry and I don't understand why, and then in the afternoon it's drying too quick, I'm not really able to adjust to that change while I'm working. So a wet palette at least keeps things at an even neutral level, you know, on the high end, I guess, right, in terms of like very thin stuff. I may notice still some things drying faster than they would typically, or that I'm you know, expecting them to. But as a whole, that's sort of something that's baked into a wet palette that allows me to do it. So, but I mean, you see how I'm moving my brush right here on the camera, and then that translates to this much paint on the actual brush, and it's only because it's thin. But most of the work that I do, I want to be able to use the brush as a pen and be very precise. So that's pretty much how I paint now, is just always perfect thin paint, because it allows you to use really the surface tension of the brush that you're using itself, rather than the surface tension that you'd be getting by applying the paint first. So hopefully that's a very good explanation for you. I think it's probably pretty good. But yeah, long story short, I've been using one. I just didn't have the palette cam running. So. Which I'm still not a big fan of the palette cam, because depending on how much light is coming into the room at once and yada yada yada, it's very hard to get actual like correct coloring on that camera. So, but it at least allows you to see sort of how much water I'm using at a time whenever I'm working. So I don't use any additives, I don't use any diluters, I don't use any thinners, I don't use any, you know, whatever things to make them dry slower. None of that is involved, it's just water. And it's literal tap water, it's not distilled water. Maybe I'm lucky that I don't need to use distilled water or anything like that, but yeah, it's just tap water. I know some companies literally sell water, quote unquote, for painting. I'm not going to name names, but that's really cute that you're trying. I appreciate capitalism in its dumbest form, so it's pretty cool. But yeah, you don't need anything special, man. Other than the paint, I guess. You got to buy nice paint. But water, psh, nothing. All right, so I'm going to troll through everywhere else that I am currently, make sure I'm not missing anything. Okay, cool. Oh, hey, Peter, how's it going, man? So, wow, did you all send those messages at the same time, or did I just, like, oh, no, sorry, my comments weren't loading. Okay. Hey, Philip, how's it going? Hey, Peter. Philip says, is there a specific type of brush that you use with this technique? If you're meaning just non-metallic metal in general, no. But if you're meaning, like, whenever I'm using like, I'm doing work that's very, very thin, or I'm trying to control layering or anything like that, regardless of the brand, I'm always going to be using a real bristle brush. So whether that's sable, whether it's whatever, horse meat, dog meat, cat meat, you know, it just needs to be real hair because of the way that it actually holds the paint and allows you to sort of control those very, very, very thin layers. But beyond that, I still use the cheapo brushes and everything like that I used to preach about so thoroughly. I just haven't done it much. Yesterday I was explaining one reason you haven't seen me using those brushes is because I've been showing more higher end work on the stream more consistently, so I don't need to be using, you know, cheaper brushes. And most of the time too, I can't do as well with like a nylon synthetic brush on the high end to do some of the stuff that it is more predictable. So sometimes synthetic brushes can be a little bit unpredictable, meaning, you know, you may load it with the same amount of water twice or the same amount of pigment twice, but it comes out of that brush differently each time. So you can't really get comfortable in knowing how that brush is going to act every time you use it. So, which is why I thought it was funny. I'm sure some of you have seen it. There's the Kickstarter called Ghost Brushes, and it's like a guy that's reselling the cheap brushes from China on Kickstarter, but he's like making 900% profit. There's nothing special about those brushes. They're literally just nylon brushes, so they should be like 10 cents each. But, you know, a brush like that someone's trying to sell you for miniature painting specifically, you need to be very, very leery of, because it's not about what you're using the brush for, it's literally what that brush is made out of. That's the only thing that matters. And if it's nylon or synthetic, whatever the material is, doesn't matter. It's only going to do so much work for you at the end of the day. You can do a lot of work with it, but when it comes to this sort of separation of pigment and holding pigment and the rate at which it's releasing whatever liquid you have in there, whether it's loaded with water, whether it's loaded with a wash, you name it, it's always going to act differently than a synthetic material. So hopefully that's another good answer. We've had a lot of good questions out here today so far. And yes, Laura is here. She's just silently working in the back. We still haven't... Yesterday, I think the suggestion was a Q&A with Laura and Arthur and I all together, which we could set up. We could set up a live Q&A. Or what I should do is just we'll do I'll make a post on the page, and then you can just leave questions there, and then we may or may not do it at some point. But we could set it up really hilarious, actually, with this setup with these chairs, and have the camera like right there from the kitchen, and we're like, hi, baby. Hi, let us sell you something. Join this cult. You believe Arthur is nearby? Is he?
He is.
He is, yeah. He's actually, he hangs out with Laura when Laura's here. He doesn't like me. If there's a girl in the immediate vicinity, he's all about that. He does not hang out with me if there's a girl nearby. Because I'll have guy friends come over and he's like, meh, whatever. But if it's a lady, he's like, hi, how are you? You're cooler than this dude that I live with. So what I'm struggling with here is what I actually want to do with this arm that's behind the shield, because if the lighting is sort of coming from the top and the front, I mean, I guess it would be getting some interference from the shield in terms of the amount of light that'd be hitting. So I guess I just, yeah, I answered my own issue there by just thinking about it for a second. But since the lighting isn't as obvious on this one, which really is just if you're painting a big non-metallic metal suit of armor and you want it to be weird and you want to have red in it and blue in it, like there's red, blue, purple, brown, there's all kinds of colors that are sort of tinted throughout this. The directional lighting is kind of more difficult. Now if I had something to do like non-metallic or OSL with directly, that would make sense, then that'd be really cool too, because that'd be much simpler and I could get a pretty realistic effect. But currently we're just slowly building, making sure we're not blowing contrast out of the water or anything like that we've already sort of established. But and then for the skulls and stuff, I am going to have a secondary metal color, probably like a bronze or a brass. So that's going to end up replacing, you know, so like this whole front section of the shield, whoops, is like a big piece of metal plating, and then probably the brackets and maybe some of the skulls here that are like on the underside of the armor that you don't really see. And then I'm going to tint it back again one final time, and then somewhere in between all of that, it should sort of come together. So what I'll do now, though, is we're just going to start working with white, and we'll start sort of refining some of these highlight points to see if the contrast makes sense. And if it doesn't, that's fine. It just means that we need to back it up a little bit in terms of moving up and down. So we'll just move back a couple tonal steps and start adjusting our color, our level of contrast. On the new website as well, I am going to have a section where I'm going to be just selling random painted stuff. And I'm also going to start doing what I'm sort of playing around with the idea of, they're sort of like tutorial. They're going to be like tutorial miniatures. So they're going to be miniatures that are essentially painted up to a certain stage to show you a technique step by step. So like if I'm doing one that's about OSL, on one side it'll be like the very basic beginner sections, all the way refining it out to a very completed stage. And in that way, you know, you can take a miniature like that and really study step by step to see if you're doing it the same or if you're doing it differently. So I'm going to start throwing some of those up there. The prices aren't going to be crazy on those either. They're probably going to be on Bones Minis or, you know, whatever, something like that that's really economic, but still allows me to do a good job. And then, so those are going to be on there. And then I'll have some competition pieces on there that I've done as well in the past, or just sort of like very high-end stuff. I need to wipe this off. That's not supposed to go there. So I'm going to have some of that on there as well, just for fun. And then there'll be a lot new content. So like you'll be able to purchase one-on-one lessons there. You'll be able to purchase like specific lessons, or sort of like if you wanted to learn painting a certain miniature, like it'll be set up to where you can select a miniature and then select what technique you want to learn from it and different things like that, or if you want a custom one. So there'll be all kinds of really cool stuff available. I don't want to say very soon, because you guys know that I wanted this running last month, so however fast it actually takes me. But it's at least ready to rock and roll and the store is live, so baby steps. So you can see now I'm just going back in with that final white. I haven't been actually putting it a lot of places, but starting to refine and pull out that really dark metallic color. Whenever you apply a color like white too, even though the color that we were just working with appeared to be relatively bright, it immediately is going to bring down the tone of everything else next to it. So that is also just something to sort of know in general, right? Because if you're working and you're like, why is this coming out so differently? Well, that's the nature of how that goes. You're effectively super increasing the contrast of whatever you're working on, so you're always going to run into that. I feel like the last time I did non-metallic metal, it was sort of this color, was when I was doing the work for the Confrontation Kickstarter. Which, by the way, they totally ghosted on me and have not confirmed all the work that I did for them, or confirmed that they have my shipping address correct, or confirmed that they're going to be sending me any of the new resin that they've been talking about. So we're putting them on notice as potential con artists here, just so you guys know. Well, Robert, if you join the mini painting group that we have, you should totally post a picture of that. So we can ridicule you and make fun of you and put really mean things in the comments. Just kidding. No one's allowed to do that. We don't play that way in the painting group, but it's just mini painting group. Somebody can tag it. I don't know if I can tag it myself. Let me see. Yeah, right here. Here you go. Throw a picture of it in there, and we'll be able to see. All right. Should have seen that coming. I feel like my lighting is too bright there. Hold on 1 second. One-handed adjustments. There we go. Yeah, if you love being talked down to, we're probably not the best group to join. You could probably join the miniature painting tips and tricks page, because like literally there are no tips and tricks in that group, and everyone just acts really smug, but not so much in this one. Oh, I take that back. I guess we did make fun of War Machine the other day. So maybe we're not like the nicest group, but we don't make fun of each other. And in alternate news, if you need miniatures to buy on the cheap, Miniature Market is like abandoning ship on all War Machine products, so they're like up to 90% off. They marked $2 million off MSRP of all of the different items. So if you like their miniatures at all, definitely go check out Miniature Market, because they are getting out. They will no longer have those minis, so... Or if they do, they'll be on permanent discount type of deal like they do. The clearance sale that never ends type of thing. There we go. Slowly pushing him up. Slowly but surely. Sorry, I'm clicking and viewing here. Sorry, I was seeing what someone commented. So it's actually kind of hard to see here because... So this is an optical illusion. If I'm not crazy, which, you know, there's no bet on that, it probably looks like the sword is crooked right now. If I had to guess, does it look like it has an S or whatever? So that is actually because I have it highlighted up on the top on that side and down below on that side, so it looks super crooked, right? But it's really not. I was able to straighten it out pretty well. I think it's actually... It may have a bit of a divot, but I think by the time I have the actual reflectivity, so to speak, painted on there, then you won't be able to tell that as much. Or if you can, it's just gonna look like it's, you know, your eyes playing tricks on you because of the highlighting on it, so... Assuming everything goes to plan there. Oh, and again, to everybody that was asking about the specific materials, so just like the wet palette stuff or the paintbrushes, you can go to the website, minipainting.studio, click on the Amazon store link on the navigation at the very top of the page. If you're on your phone, just click on the little menu icon and you can pick the Amazon store, and you'll literally be able to see every single thing that I have for sale. Oh, this is not the Bones version. Sorry, guys. This is the metal version. So I literally varnished this guy after he got primed. That's like my new thing with metal miniatures, is doing a clear coat underneath. So he's not gonna be chipped, but yeah, he was a big metal boyo. So that's actually why probably his detail might be a little bit better. But yeah, he is not a bone boy, so to speak. A little bit sad to see Bones 4 is a little bit delayed. Honestly, I don't care. It's not like I have time to paint any of it, and I'm going to be giving away pretty much all of my Bones 4 to everybody that watches the streams anyway, so as long as it shows up, we're good. I just want Argent and King of the Jungle. Or King of the Jungle. I think that's his name. King of the Jungle, whatever. The big elephant guy. So... those are like the only two miniatures out of that whole thing that I was like, you know what, I want them. And they were add-ons, so I guess I didn't even need to get Bones in general. But those are for me, the rest are for you. Another good reason, if you haven't liked the Facebook page, so if you did stumble across me on Twitch or YouTube somehow randomly, following the Facebook page will give you all the up-to-date stuff whenever I'm doing giveaways, any kind of cool feedback content that I'm looking for, anything like that. Always happens on Facebook. So Mini Painting Studio on there, Mini Painting Studio on everything, Mini Painting Studio on Instagram. I was born 1/12/90. My social security number is 8325-217-4423. That's not real. And my bank routing number is #0372. So that should be all the information you need to find everything about me, wherever you may need it. So once I get past this stage of going through and applying more white, one final time, what I'll do is I'll go through and see if I'm happy with everything. At this stage, especially with metallics, you can really tint them to go different directions. So if I'm not happy with this finally, what I'll do is I'll go through and do a glaze tint on everything. And that will allow me to go and adjust whatever I may not be happy with at the time. And then once I finally make it through all of that, I'll go back through and do another round of shadow tinting, and then clean up one final time with white, because at that point, everything should be gradiated in a gradiated, right? Enough to where everything's toned down a little bit, and then it's done. So it's usually, when I'm working on something on like a Wheeler level, it's a multi-step process. Which, you know, may not take any longer than if it was a display level thing that I was doing a bunch of layering on, right? But it's just using different tools and moving back and forth that really makes the difference there. So I know yesterday we were joking around that I'm not allowed to say anymore what quality I'm painting a miniature at, but even though I do like that idea, because I know there are plenty of eyeballs that watch this that do the same thing that I do for money. And I like the idea of just not telling that anymore. But this is obviously not a tabletop level miniature, so. I really like that you can tell on this shoulder pad specifically, because it doesn't have the big skull in the middle. You can see that gradient from the red to the blue there. And those colors were done pretty much throughout the entire thing. And then that way too, this doesn't necessarily look like gold. If it is a gold, it's a very old gold. I just think it's an older, like the accent color that we're painting all over the place. I'm seeing it as more of like a crazy old bronze or something, or maybe just a gross messed up steel. But either way, I think it's pretty good. What's the ETA to get accepted to the page? What are you talking about? The group? Well, whenever I'm done here, so sorry. Chris, Bones Black. They're cool. They're fine. I definitely think they're a good direction to move in, especially for larger stuff. So like the big Bones minis, the dragons, all of that, economically speaking, they're great. But obviously you run into the bendy bits and all that stuff. So if they were able to do larger minis, so not like the giant dragons or whatever, but if you start replacing some of those like mid-range, larger size creatures and things like that with Bones Black, I think that they'll do pretty well. So, but we won't know. Again, they're going to be rolling out individual models as a promotion to roll out the actual activity or whatever, or not activity, but to roll out the new line, and then beyond that, they'll just put them into production regularly. But I don't think it's going to be just a typical thing. All right, cool. I just added all of you to the group that applied. Since you mentioned it. No, you're good, Robert. You can upload it right now if you'd like, and I'll hop over and check it out. That group, once we shut down the Patreon page, which we're going to be doing probably in March, that group is where all the Patreon people are going to end up anyway whenever they're sharing work from their classes and stuff. So it's going to be a fun group to see a lot of cool work in and progress of painters and different things like that. But if I do have some new eyeballs watching... Oh wait, Philip, was that you yesterday that was asking about people getting the palette overseas? Or the periodic table overseas? I was mentioning earlier, but you weren't in here, I don't think, that I will be doing a PDF of the periodic table. There won't be a PDF for the palettes just because you won't be able to do the exercises on them. So to save confusion, if someone buys one thinking they'll be able to, I'm just not even going to allow that confusion to happen. But we will do that. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you can check out minipainting.studio. I have some power-up palettes on there that are fine art education practices scaled down for miniature painting. Everything from OSL practice to three-dimensional practice to being able to practice texturing. There are all kinds of different things you're able to do with those practice palettes. There's also a 50-minute video. I think I initially said it was an hour, but I cut some parts out of it, so now it's 50. But there's a 50-minute corresponding video showing you really only how to do, like, I go through and do 4 examples pretty much from every section. There are 5 sections, so if you're an insane, really fast painter, the palette itself may take you around 5 to 8 hours to complete. But if you're more of a general hobbyist and you're really trying to practice and learn and just get better with a brush and everything like that, you're probably talking at least 12 hours or more to complete that exercise. And then the color palette is self-explanatory. You're just literally color matching and doing all of that. And that exercise is, I have no way to tell you how long that's going to take, because even when I did a small section of it on the power-up palette to show an example, it's super easy to mess up. So I was like, oh, well, this color's not right. Let me adjust it. This color's not right. So I spend like 15 minutes on 2 little dots, and there's something like 700 colors that you'll be mixing throughout that whole exercise. So doing an exercise like that, for example, in college when I was doing studio art, you know, I took a class called Color for a full semester, but one of the things that you do is you mix a full RGB spectrum because it permanently stays with you in your brain, sort of like muscle memory. You know, if you do it once, you'll always remember it, type of thing. It's a process that permanently affects your sort of color knowledge and scope as an artist. So with miniature painting, it's extremely crucial, especially if you're someone without a gigantic collection of paints like myself, who needs a bunch of pre-mixed paint. It's super beneficial because it really helps you get confident and get really good with being able to go to your palette and mix colors and be successful with that. So both of those are really, really cool. And then obviously the periodic table of painting is available, and that is if you know what the periodic table of elements is, just imagine that, but instead a color palette, or sorry, a color wheel that makes you, or helps you make good color decisions while you paint. So that's just really fun. It's available in a tabletop size, which I use, and it's also available in a large poster print as well. So I had them here by me. I was going to show you, but I don't know where they're at now. So let's see. Any recommendations on how to approach if they need something different? Metal miniatures from Reaper? Well, it doesn't matter who's making the miniatures at all, so the brand name doesn't matter. If it's a metal miniature, you're obviously going to have to prime it and make sure it's a good coat of primer, so allowing it to sit for a while before you start painting on it. If it's a plastic mini, I'll prime it and paint immediately. If it's metal, I want it to sit because it's a little bit more fiddly until that primer really, really hardens on it. And then obviously you want to varnish it really well as well, because the metal is for the most part, a smooth surface, which is a lot different and not as porous, even with something like PVC plastic, ABS plastic, HIPS plastic, high impact polystyrene. Like anything that comes on a sprue is usually HIPS, the high impact polystyrene. If it's not and it's rigid, it's ABS. And if that's not the case, then it's PVC plastic. If it's like bendy plastic, all of those usually are fine with priming, and you always want to varnish the same. But really, when it comes to metal, you just have to know that. You're going to have to take care of it. And then really the threat isn't necessarily like while you're working on a miniature, it's when you're finished with the metal miniature and you drop it, the paint chips off, whatever the case is. So metal minis do require a little bit more love. They're obviously more detailed than traditional plastic. Even if it's resin being more porous, you'll be able to get a better base coat, you'll be able to prime and everything like that, but you still want to be varnishing as well. I would actually say resin probably holds onto paint better in general than all of the other materials. It also has really good detail, but it can be trash too. If you look at a company like Finecast, that resin that they use is like somebody took toothpaste and just like squeezed it and they're like, here's your miniature, right? Like that's garbage resin compared to other companies that are making these like super lifelike busts and things like that. So even when it comes to plastic, it just depends, but that's sort of my rule of thumb is even if it's metal, you have to really care about what you're going to be doing with it afterwards. So hopefully that answers. You need to get better in color mixing. Yep, well, unfortunately. That's the one I can't really do internationally. But, well, and the reason why, let me explain as well. So the coating that is put on top of all the palettes that I'm selling feels like airbrushed primer. It feels like Styronese. It feels like Vallejo. So when you're painting on it, it holds paint and it allows you to use thin paint without it running all over the place like if it was laminated with like a gloss lamination or something like that. So, and I do that myself. So like physically, I'm running that material over every single palette before I put it in the mail. So that's kind of why I can't do those products that way. For people that are in Australia, I have an Australian client who's going to take a couple of those from me and he can ship them out if someone wants to buy them that's in Australia. I have one client that's in Europe currently, but that's obviously a way different situation just because of countries dropping in and out of the EU and paying taxes in between all of that. I'd rather not put that on somebody that doesn't work for me at all. So, you know, the Europe option I have to think of, or if I can find something that actually works for, because I looked at the shipping and the shipping is almost the same cost as if you literally like paid for it in general. It's like 40% of the cost already. So but yeah, so there you go. There's a lot. Peter just used his periodic table. Yeah, go buy a periodic table. People use them. They work well. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, you're right about it. It is sort of like a heat-treated metal color. I didn't think about that. I'm talking to our Twitch people, which I neglected. I'm sorry. All right. What time is it? 53? Oh, we're almost done for the day? Okay, well, all right. Well, we're almost done for the day, but you at least got to watch quite a bit of the process. Like I said, in general, I'm almost done with this miniature, but it's just more of this slow refining work and then doing the big blade and then doing his horns in any secondary color that I would want to do. I'll have pictures of this, obviously, pictures of some other stuff as well this evening, and that'll be it. So, not sure what I'm working on tomorrow. I'm thinking maybe something from Kingdom Death. I'm not sure, though. Don't hold me to it. But yeah, we're just going to call it. So, either way, thanks for hanging out. If you are watching randomly and you've never seen my stuff before, I don't know how. I'm everywhere. I throw it in your face, but make sure you follow here on Facebook or YouTube or Twitch. I don't really care either. As long as you're there, it's all good. So, appreciate you, and I will see you guys tomorrow at 2 p.m. CST.